Today on Better Book Clubs, why I love to read nonfiction. I've noticed a trend in the last few years in my own reading habits swaying towards nonfiction. I used to read pretty exclusively fiction, and now I'm finding that I'm being drawn more to nonfiction books. So today I want to talk about why that is and what I enjoy about reading nonfiction, particularly because a lot of book clubs are very focused on fiction, and you might want to consider whether bringing nonfiction into your reading lists might be a great idea. I'm not really sure why I've been reading more nonfiction in the last few years. I'm a pretty picky fiction reader, and so it might just be that I've been dissatisfied with a lot of the fiction I've read, but there are also some great fiction books out there, so that's not the only explanation. I think it may also have to do with getting a little bit older and being more interested in practical, down-to-earth applications of what's happening in the world around us, and less interested in spending time in an imaginative fictional space. Whatever it is, I'm finding that I'm really enjoying a lot of nonfiction. I'm going to mention a bunch of titles today, which I'll put in the comments section below, but I also want to give you 3 reasons why reading nonfiction or nonfiction in conjunction with fiction can be really pleasurable. One reason I really like reading nonfiction is that although fiction gives me an imaginative sense of people and places that I don't know, when I read nonfiction about them, I know that I'm getting a more accurate, more detailed, deeper understanding. And in particular, when I read a whole constellation of books around the same topic, I know that I'm getting something of greater historic, accurate detail. So as an example, I really loved Khaled Hosseini's book, The Kite Runner, which a lot of people have read. That's a work of fiction. But I've also been reading a lot of nonfiction about Afghanistan lately. So a couple of books by Afghans, A Fort of Nine Towers, I Am Malala, which was also a bestseller, and then a book called Kabul Beauty School about a woman who moves to Kabul to open a beauty school. It was really a fascinating book. An Unexpected Light, which is kind of a travelogue of Afghanistan in the late 90s, the Bookseller of Kabul. And so reading all of these nonfiction books, each of course with their own bias and their own experience and their own perspective on Afghanistan, is giving me a bigger, broader, and deeper understanding of that country and its people. I also love it when my nonfiction reading accidentally intersects. So if I've read a book of nonfiction, that's so much more likely to happen that something that I read starts to crop up in other places as well, even unexpected places. So, for example, I read David McCullough's history, The Greater Journey, about Americans in Paris. And it talked about a lot of different people over a pretty broad time period, and the things that he talks about in that book keep popping up now in other books I've read. And really a variety of books, everything from a biography of Margaret, who spent some time in Paris, to a science book called The Alchemy of Us that talks about Samuel Morse. So I love the way nonfiction makes that happen, and it happens somehow in nonfiction much more frequently, I find, than it happens when I'm reading a lot of fiction. Of course, you can also plan this yourself. So one of the really great ways of pairing nonfiction with fiction is to read an author's biography and to read some of their work. And even though the author's biography doesn't tell us everything we need to know about reading an author's work, and in fact, we don't need to know anything about an author's biography in order to enjoy their work, it's an interesting way of bringing fiction and nonfiction together, and probably one of the most obvious ways to do it. Especially if you're not much of a nonfiction reader, start with biography. So for example, Wendy Moffat's highly acclaimed biography of E.M. Forster is a great place to start, and you could also read Forster's famous novels, A Passage to India, A Room with a View. So that might be, some project like that might be an interesting way of bringing nonfiction and fiction together. Even if you're a really devoted reader of fiction, think about how nonfiction might be able to enrich your reading experience and bring the fiction that you're reading even more to life. I'll be back soon with another video for your book club through Better Book Clubs.